We're now live on Facebook and we are recording. And I want to welcome the devotees that are here, and I want to introduce our modern day sage that has come to speak on our new series called The Beauty and Messiness of the Sadhaka's Journey. And today I'm just really excited to have Krisangi dasi from Finland. Been connected with her for many years in more indirect ways, and to actually get to be with her in person today is really exciting. I think we talked one time on the phone when my husband was visiting you in Finland, and
oh yeah,
that's the only time I think of we actually had an in-person meeting. So this is very exciting for me. So just to give a quick recap of what we're doing for those of you that maybe this is your first time on watching the series, is we're having our modern day sages come on, and we're going to be looking at their lives from the lens of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which is kind of his developmental stages of how a person goes from a very ordinary life to being extraordinary in developing their gifts and what they do for the world, going from a selfish kind of life of just living for oneself to living to give something great to the world. So we've talked about there's many like steps involved, but we've kind of boiled it down to the getting the call or getting the invitation to come on this journey, and then your departure from the ordinary world to come to something greater. And then there's an initiation stage of where we're finding our guides and we're finding our teachers, and we're also running into lots of challenges and adversities, and making our way to a time where we actually find our true self and our greatness that we can share with others. So, my dear Krisangi, welcome. And I would love to hear what your call was. What was how did Krishna's flute come into your life?
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and a little bit nervous about because of the fact that the two previous interviews that you did were so amazing, and I'm wondering what I'll have to offer, but I'll do my best. So I first met the devotees in the mid-90s. They were distributing books and CDs really actively in Finland at that time, and also selling prasadam at rock festivals. And I was a vegetarian at that already back then, and it wasn't that usual in Finland in the 90s. So I immediately had some respect and appreciation for the devotees because of the fact that they weren't just talking about kindness, but actually, putting it into practice. But I was really suspicious of religion. I was really angry at God because I was disabled and still am, obviously, and I was sort of asking myself, if God is good, then why was I born with disabled feet? And it just felt so unfair that was something that I just couldn't get over. But when I really I really got deeper into got a bit of a deeper understanding of the philosophy when I met Kamalaksha in my then friend, afterwards boyfriend and now husband, in 1998. And he was able to explain the philosophy to me in a way that really made sense, that really felt like this is the most reasonable, most sensible way of looking at the world and looking at suffering and God and our place in the world. And that's when I started practicing.
Beautiful. Yeah. So Kamalaksha was your Vartma Pradakshika guru, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that really, like the question of suffering, like why am I suffering? Why is there so much suffering in the world? It's something that people much smarter than me have been asking forever, but Kamalaksha had the answers in karma and reincarnation, and having so much information also about God, that I found that really appealing as well. I read the Bhagavad Gita, and he took me to the local temple to the Sunday feast, and I felt like that was the most beautiful, the deities, the altar, that was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Wow. So I kind of felt like both things, kind of the experience and the philosophy felt so right to me somehow.
That's wonderful. So did you have to leave like a way of living or friends, or what did your departure from your previous life look like? Was there, or were you able to kind of integrate the two of them?
Well, I had a group of friends that I was kind of partying with a lot. And I, like, looking back at it now, I had a bit of an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, I have to say, because I was an unhappy person, deeply unhappy. And alcohol was a way of trying to fix that. That obviously would have led into huge problems in the long run. And that's another thing that I'm really grateful for, that I really feel that, bhakti intervened at a point in my life where I had started on a road that would have led to really like deep self-harm and self-hate. And that's something, that I strongly feel still today, that in the beginning I maybe didn't even realize the impact, that these changes would have on me and in the long run, and how the Gaudiya Vaishnava lifestyle, how it really sort of solved so many problems for me, and has the potential to be the solution for the whole world. In the beginning, it maybe just felt like this is something weird and marginal that I'm doing with a bunch of other weirdos, and that appealed to me. As a teenager, I wanted to be special. I was 19 years old. I was like, it was like cool to be a part of this little, almost like a secret club. But today, when I, maybe having a bit more of an understanding of the philosophy, I feel like this isn't, a small club, that this could really help everyone.
Beautiful. And you had talked about, having this disability that you were born with. And I know that, you were saying that it, you really struggled with understanding that why would, God do this to you? And the philosophy started to help you to make some sense out of that. And I would just be curious to kind of hear how maybe that progression happened for you, and how your disability, maybe how different you look at that now. And maybe explain a little bit about what your disability is. And
yeah, I had malformed feet, so my feet always were weak and looked funny, and the other kids would of course notice that, and kids can be pretty cruel. So
sure,
I was bullied a lot at school, and always kind of felt like an outsider, and had a strong desire to belong, to be a part of a group, which also is a tendency that could have, really gotten me in a lot of trouble if the group that I then attached myself to wasn't the devotees.
Right.
So when after getting to know Kamalaksha and kind of starting to look at my disability in a different way, I started thinking that this isn't like a punishment or a random, act of nature, but this is something that I can learn from, that this is a reminder for me not to get too sort of attached to the external, not to judge others by their appearance, because I don't want to be judged either. And so my feet were getting worse and worse. My old feet were getting more and more painful. And when I was 23 years old, together with my doctors, we decided that I'd get amputated. And especially at that point, I think people were really amazed by how calmly I made that decision. And I mean, it's not unique. Afterwards I've met other people who have had severe issues and who've chosen to be amputated, but it's, I mean, it's a little bit unusual, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
But even like a small theoretical understanding, you know, of the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, like even that sort of very superficial understanding that I had of Bhagavad Gita and the idea that we're not these bodies was so helpful, you know, at that point, because I was just looking at it, you know, like the old analogy of us, you know, as jivas kind of driving around in different cars, like changing bodies, like someone would change a car. And I was able to, you know, look at my feet and kind of say to myself that, you know, I'm just like switching to a different pair of feet to walk with. And what are feet really? They're meant for walking. They're not, you know, our personality doesn't reside in our feet. And so that made such a huge difference for me in that point in my life, being able to you know, at least theoretically understand that I would still be the same person, that switching my feet to a nicer, really, you know, a much nicer pair, making this upgrade from a rusty old car to a fancy new Tesla or whatever wouldn't really, you know, essentially change who I was. So I got amputated in 2002 and learned to walk again, and I all really went so smoothly that it's really, I mean, I've had such an easy life. People often think that these have been difficult experiences, but looking back, everything just went so easily for me. And then the following year, 2003, Kamalaksha and I finally got married. And for our honeymoon, we decided that we wanted to go to California. He had already been several times when he was younger, and I had always wanted to go to the Ratha Yatra. That was like a long time dream of mine at that point. So we decided to go to Los Angeles and to San Francisco. That year the Ratha Yatras were timed, so we were able to go to both. And obviously Guru Maharaj was doing the festivals at Odaria. So it was kind of like on a whim that we decided to go to Odaria. We had been reading Guru Maharaj's books and listening to his classes. We had been really impressed. It was Brigu who had introduced us to Guru Maharaj's work. So we went to Los Angeles, and then we continued our journey to San Francisco. Got to a devotee drove us up to Odaria, and we met Guru Maharaj and talked with him, and we were really impressed, and just by the beauty of the whole place and the whole, you know, setting that just felt so spiritually supercharged, I want to say, like such a special, unique place. And Guru Maharaj, after our first talk, he called us back to him later the same evening and said that he wanted to talk to us again. And so we went, and he said that he'd like to initiate us. And we were like, no, like, this is such a bad idea. Like, you're making a huge mistake here. Because, you know, we were we both very strongly identified as devotees, but we were having huge problems with our sadhana, like huge gaps. We both, like, I feel, had kind of a little bit, well, I shouldn't probably talk for Kamalaksha. He has his own story, but me personally, at least what had kind of happened was that the intellectual, you know, I was always intellectually very attracted to the philosophy, but then like actually putting that into use in practical terms, that like heart exercise, as opposed to the intellectual exercise, was lacking, because I wasn't really feeling, the feelings that were supposed to be there when chanting. And so we were trying to, talk Guru Maharaj out of this horrible mistake that he was about to make. But he, in his mercy, he had a bigger vision of the situation, and I'm, eternally grateful for him, and so happy that we allowed ourselves to be talked into it, and got initiated the following day. And that, that connection that was created at that point, like the way the spiritual current that just came to us through Guru Maharaj. And I mean, in the name of honesty, it has to be said that it's not like my sadhana changed that day and ever since, I've chanted my rounds perfectly. It's something that I still struggle with to this day. But having that experience of someone actually fully, living for bhakti, and being in connection with someone who has that connection to Krishna, that I feel like without Guru Maharaj, I probably wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have anything without him. I wouldn't be anything.
Wow, it's so true. I mean, to have the connection with the Sadguru in this lifetime is like gold for all of us. And
I also say that I really felt like also that so relieved to find a guru in whose company I felt like I could be myself, like fully myself. Because previously I had kind of felt like, having grown up in a quite an equal Nordic country, in a pretty equal society, having this pressure around me of having to be this shy, humble creature that, the humble Mataji, that just isn't me. And that's not who I was brought up to be, and not like the way that I've looked at women in our society. Yeah. And I felt like a lot of times before, I had felt like I have so much love for the tradition, but do I need to like suppress myself somehow and try to pretend to be someone else? But with Guru Maharaj, I felt like suddenly the modern world and the tradition were like balanced in a way that also enabled me to fully embrace the tradition.
Yes, that's I also had that experience with meeting Guru Maharaj, was that I could totally be who I was, and be accepted for that. And yeah, it was so refreshing to have his company. It's really beautiful. Yeah, so you have done many things in the last 17 years or since then. And well, one of the things that the first thing I ever read that you had been involved with was this little booklet. I love this little booklet. I don't know how many of you on the call have ever gotten to see it, but it's the little book of Bhakti Yoga. Brigupad wrote the texts in it, and Kamalaksha and Krisangi did the artwork. And it's just so charming. I just pulled one, just opened the book, and it says, "How can I know if that's an Anubhav?" It's Kamalaksha, who's in the duck form, yawning. And Krishangi is the little mouse. I guess these are their alter egos. And she's going, "But how can I?" He's yawning, and she's saying, "But how can I know if that's an Anubhav or he's just lazy?" I mean, it's just like so many. Every single cartoon in here is just like one that just makes me smile. So
thank you. Yeah, the process really Brigu wrote all these very serious, very well argumented, philosophically correct little texts about different aspects of Bhakti Yoga, of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And then I did these silly drawings. And I think I also did them really fast. I think we were working on 2 different books that summer and wanting to get them out quickly. And so I was just doodling basically and doing the type of jokes like the Anubhav yawning duck. So but I feel like we may have created like a perfect balance there, between silliness and seriousness. And I think it's so important. And that's also something that I've always really appreciated in Guru Maharaj, how he talks about how we need to, present Gaudiya Vaishnavism in a way that's relevant to people and constantly keep kind of updating the way that it's presented, because people are different and times change, and some people will prefer Brigu's texts and some people will prefer my drawings, and I feel that's like what we need something for everyone, for the silly ones like myself and the serious ones like Brigu. There needs to be something for everyone to enjoy.
And I think, I appreciated the text and reading the text and then seeing the cartoons. The balance of it. And yeah, just it's like charming. That's the word for that book. And you've also, you've done other books, time after time, the 10 avatars of Krishna. That was another book that you had done. When did you do that book? When was that published?
It came out in 2014, but I had basically been planning to do that book ever since I became a devotee. I started reading the Srimad Bhagavatam pretty early on, and of course there are so many things in the Bhagavatam, and I definitely wasn't able to appreciate all the philosophical insights at that point, but I was immediately very attracted to the Dashavatar, to the different stories of the different gods, and I always wanted to do a book about them, but somehow it felt so difficult and so such a huge undertaking to cover them all. I did a small, like a mini comic about Matsya, and we were talking about doing all the 10 avatars as separate little booklets and maybe putting them in a box, but then it kind of, that project didn't sort of grow organically, so we put it aside. And this is something we've noticed when we worked on our books, that sometimes a book needs to we need to take a break with one project, and maybe if we're inspired to work on something else, like we allow that project to pull us in, and then we return to the other. So I'm really happy that I didn't do the Dasavatar book, in 98, that I did it so much later, when I had developed so much as a storyteller and as an artist, and so I was able to do it in a way that would maybe do justice to Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course, I also felt like nervous about, being offensive, like in my drawing style, and not being able to do those amazing Indian miniature style paintings that we see. But I was really inspired by seeing some sort of a DIY art from India, all those murals they have, and all those amazing paintings on trucks, and like the gods are everywhere in India, and it's not like you can only paint God in India if you're perfectly trained and have the perfect technique, but it's something that's a part of people's everyday life, and that sort of a folk art approach really made me feel like I could, I could be a small chain in this long, or a small link in this long chain of artists who have done their own versions, like their own interpretations. And in that way, I felt better about taking on this challenge.
Yeah, no, it's the cyclic succession of artists here, and because you arranged it that you, like you said, that you put it aside for a little while, and the timing was perfect when you were really had more of a maybe just spiritual understanding of these avatars and what they were about, that you were able to pick it up again.
Yeah, and I worked on it a lot in Madhuvan too. We were in Madhuvan the previous winter, and we had a really strict system of working on the text and the sketches every day for a couple of hours before lunch, a couple of hours after lunch, and we would show them to Guru Maharaj. And being in that environment, I've realized over the years that I'm really susceptible for outside influences. I kind of, wherever I go, my mind really adapts to that environment. And so I love being at the ashram, but I also love being in other places that aren't very, favorable for spiritual practice. So I need to be careful about where I go and who I attach myself to, because I'm not the type of, there are these incredibly strong devotees who can be living alone in the middle of nowhere and kind of creating their own sadhu sanga in a way. But I realized that I'm just completely dependent on others. I just need, constant contact with devotees and constant nourishment, or I start to like drift away. So I don't think that book could have happened if we haven't had the opportunity to be in Madhuvan, to be in that environment where I really feel like a different person, like a better version of myself.
Yes, and so that empowerment coming again from the guru and coming from the spiritual environment, and how that it's so perceptible in our being when we're in it.
Yeah, being in the company of people who have devoted their whole lives, just seeing how it's worked for them gives me so much confidence that to keep up my practice, and it also sort of inspires me to continue trying to talk about this through our books, and trying to share the little that I've realized about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's both you and your husband's approach to life as well, just like another book, the Expedition Number 3, and that's a book about cycling and philosophy and enduring prolonged exposure to the elements, and you have your tour to Europe. So I'd like to hear about maybe some of the adversity. And I was thinking how Krisangi and her husband, because their lives have been pretty well, she was saying how they've had this charmed life in a lot of ways, and not a lot of stresses with maybe material things so much. So they go out and create their own adversity. So I'd love to hear about some of the adversity that you created on these trips, that you were in Iceland and you were in, on that long trip in Europe, from Poland to France, and just maybe tell us something about those trips.
Yeah, it is fascinating when you put it like this, that we have a nice house here and we have everything we need. So why would we go out and sleep in a tent and get soaked by rain? But I guess that a lot of times I find that when you plan for enjoyment, you end up suffering. And when you almost plan for suffering, when you put yourself in difficult situations, you end up enjoying. And we can't really appreciate what we have until it gets taken away. And the cycling trips that we've done, when we've sort of forced ourselves to be a little bit more austere, to have a better sadhana, in the sense that we wake up early in the morning and we have like a strict daily schedule. It's really been helpful, I think, for us in being able to appreciate what we have here at home, but also it's also really changed the way that I look at the world. I feel like when you put yourself in a vulnerable situation like that, you really see people at their best also, and you see different countries, different societies at their best. You see like like, for example, when we were cycling in the US, I was nervous before we went. We were cycling from New York to San Francisco, and I had been to both cities. I'd been to both coasts, but the middle was a mystery. And I was seriously wondering if we were gonna get shot by some landowner for trespassing, or because when you think about the US, like in the movies on TV,
Wild West or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So I seriously expected some, person coming from a politically very different background shooting us on the road. And what actually happened was that these people in their huge cars with stickers on them, showing that they were politically very differently aligned than we, that a lot of these people were super generous. They would stop their cars and offer us rides. They would give us water, sometimes even money. They'd offer to pay for our meals. We were constantly amazed by the kindness of these people who were so different than us on the surface, but so similar within. Finland and Russia also have a difficult history with the war and everything. And a lot of people, before we went cycling in Russia, people were warning us that this wasn't safe and we'd get robbed and murdered and worse. But we really had the same experience in Russia. People inviting us to their homes and wanting to share, tea and cookies and offering us a place to stay. And these small acts of kindness that mean so much after a long day, or rainy day on the bike. And so I feel like in my everyday life, it's easy to get angry and frustrated at people who are different than me, who think differently, who see things differently politically. And we also have a situation in Finland where people are quite aggressive at the moment politically, and the discussions get really heated, and it's hard to find ways to appreciate, to see God in everyone, to think of others as little sparks of Krishna, and not just my sweet friends, but also the really, really annoying people. But having those experiences from the bike trips of the people who on the surface were so different and engaged in many activities that I wouldn't, that aren't a part of our lifestyle, but how warmly they would open their homes to us, and how they would trust us, sometimes trust us with their homes and things, and go out to get groceries while we were alone in their house. And these really incredible things, in a world that's so full of distrust and hate, that seeing like that face of people, I feel is something that helps me even in everyday life to try to at least remember that deep down inside, we're all jivas, and even the really annoying people, that Paramatma is in their hearts as well. So
that's really beautiful. And I wanted to just bring up another point that when we first started talking, and you had said about how you kind of live out when you're doing these cycling journeys and doing things that putting yourself in difficult situations that you said, well, I live by the philosophy of Mari Krishna Raki Krishna Mari K. So I'd love you to talk a little bit about that, because I think so many of our fears in life, we don't go out of our comfort zone, and we don't try new things because ultimately it's the fear of, I'm going to be annihilated, I'm going to be, this is it.
Yeah. I remember years ago, Guru Maharaj saying that fear is based on misidentification with the body. Now, ultimately, when we're I'm afraid of the dark, for instance, a really silly fear. But ultimately, I think it's a fear of dying. And why are we afraid of dying? Because we think that we'll die with the body. We think that damage to the body means damage to ourselves, and I think that, yeah, being on those trips and we don't take unnecessary risks. We also want to care for the sadhaka there. We don't do stupid stuff, but we do things that some people will think are a little bit crazy, like camping in a small tent in Alaska in places where there are bears. A lot of people would maybe say that that's not a smart thing to do, but we felt that it was a risk that we were okay with taking. And in the end, I'm 42 now, and not everyone that I went to school with is still alive today, and they weren't eaten by bears in Alaska. Maybe they were in a car crash or got sick, or that thought of if it's my day to die, I'll die here in my own home, and if it's not my day to die, I'll be fine camping in Alaska. That's really given me a lot of comfort. Yeah, that Krishna will protect us until the time comes that he'll take this body away and give us a new one, but we're always safe.
Right. Beautiful. So I brought up a couple of things. One is that with the, when that is good, thinking about having the amputations that you had and how that might have helped to bring you more to this understanding of, I'm not the body. I mean, you did mention a little bit about that, but do you feel like that really has played a big role? Something that was so, depressing for you as a child, and then as an adult, it may have been one of the things that was such a, you see now as such a gift.
Yeah, and that really, when I think about it and how unhappy I was and how happy I am now, that's one of the big changes, that have come to my life through bhakti. And I was thinking of all the, advanced devotees giving classes in this series and their advanced realizations. And this is the small, kind of a simple thing that I have to offer, that bhakti, Gaudiya Vaishnavism has brought me happiness. But at the same time, maybe it isn't simple, because in a way we're all looking for happiness in this world. So maybe it is a big thing after all. And that's really, really how I felt. It's the same body still. And in some ways, my body is even more damaged than before, even though the prosthetics are nice, but still I lost a part of my body. But so it's just the way that I look at it that's changed, really. And I mean, I don't want to diminish. There are people who are really suffering in the world, and I've always had a strong desire to help people and to be of use and to fix things, to the extent that I forget my own practice and just run around trying to fix things. And I feel like it's just like during the last couple of years that I've come to really realize that I'm not here to fix the world. I'm here to fix my own, selfishness. On the plane, on an airplane, they'll say that if the air pressure drops in the cabin, and the masks come out, you should put on your own oxygen mask first. And I'm the person who would be running around the cabin and trying to help others, and then end up just collapsing in the middle. And this is being kind of a recurring thing with me and Kamalaksha, that I get into I start some crazy project that takes up all my time and really damages my sadhana and doesn't leave much time for me to work on our books. And I try to help everyone and fix everything, and I end up collapsing, and Kamalaksha having to help me. And I haven't really gotten much done if you look at it objectively. So I've tried to sort of develop this, Guru Maharaj sometimes talks about having a sense of urgency in terms of our spiritual practice. And I've a lot of times fallen into this trap of thinking that other things are more urgent. I'll fix this first and then I'll chant. And of course that then never comes, because then there's the next thing to fix and the next thing and the next thing. So lately I've kind of felt that I've gotten a little bit better at this, that this alarm starts to go off when I get asked to get involved in something that's not going to be helpful. But that's really something that I've struggled with, like really being able to restrain my mind from that urge that I have to fix things, to be in control. Really, that's what it's ultimately all about.
Didn't you did have some time in the parliament in Finland? You'd had some position for a while?
I was on the city council for 8 years. I ran for the parliament twice, didn't succeed, spent a lot of time and money on it, but some things maybe we need to get out of our system.
Yes.
Maybe I would have been forever wondering. Of course, if you look at it objectively, it was, I wasted so much time that I could have spent on my practice and could have gone much deeper into my practice by now if I hadn't used up all that time, in politics. But Guru Maharaj never criticized me for it. He must have seen it all along. What fool's errand it was, the whole thing. But he, in a way, he was I always felt like he was supportive, and like I said earlier, that I could be myself, and I had this strong desire to be in politics, to have that power, because I honestly believe that way I could change things for the better, for the animals, for instance, for the environment, for people. And Guru Maharaj never, said anything negative about the whole thing, even though, with his spiritual insight, with his life experience, he must have seen what was going on. And I really appreciate that he's really able to, instruct us according to where we are on our path.
Exactly. So how do you think that served you, those years that you did, serve on the city council, and you had the opportunity to exert some power and influence in Finland?
Well, there's a bike path in my hometown that maybe got built a little bit earlier than it would have otherwise. That's maybe my biggest political achievement. And frankly, I got a pretty decent amount of votes the second time I ran for the city council, and I felt that I had this duty to continue, and that they would, without me, they wouldn't, do that well. And on the following election, they did lose a seat, my party. But then the following election after that, they actually doubled the amount of seats. So in the end, maybe what I learned was that they don't really need me, and the world doesn't revolve around me, and I don't need to fix everything, that they're doing just great without me. So that sort of, a lot of times I feel like when we have this urge to fix things, that it's really like an ego thing in the end, that I want to feel important, and it's also kind of arrogant to think that I have the solution to everyone's problems. And I try to look at it more like, right now I try to look at it more like I'm the problem. My selfishness, that's the problem that I need to be fixing, and I need to put on my oxygen mask and learn to look at, it's really kind of like I said, like looking at other people and seeing them as parts of Krishna, and seeing Krishna in them, and looking at them with love and not with anger. Because that like desire to control, a lot of times I like things to be done properly, and I get angry if things don't happen on time, and if they don't happen the way I like them. and that's not like a very loving way of dealing with people.
So that would be a big area of growth that you would see in yourself from the time you started with your practices, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, at least now I recognize it.
Yeah.
That's the first step, right? There's a lot of work to do, but at least I see some things that I maybe wasn't able to see before. So, and I do think that everything in life you can learn something from. So sometimes I did feel that the whole thing with politics, that was just a huge waste of time. But then again, I think I did learn something about myself and the world, and that can be useful and can also serve, as a reminder when I'm about to get pulled into the next thing. That'll then be the new thing that I think that I need to do before I chant my rounds.
Very good. Yeah. So that's a huge takeaway from your experience. I wonder if you could just share maybe one time in all your adventures out there that you maybe thought that you were coming close to death, or you could, you might die in a situation, and were you able to take shelter of Krishna, or just something, some situation that you felt you weren't going to be able to control on your own?
I guess a lot of times it's maybe not even just a single time, but a lot of times we've kind of accidentally, and I'm the navigator, so I should have planned better, but we've ended up on roads with a lot of traffic, like seriously scary traffic, big trucks rolling past. I remember we were in Costa Rica. One time we flew to Costa Rica and cycled to Madhuvan to surprise Guru Maharaj. So we just showed up without telling him that we were coming. And that we spent a week in Madhuvan, and after that we cycled towards the Caribbean coast. And we ended up on a road, like a narrow, bumpy Costa Rican road with a lot of trucks, like really heavy traffic rolling into a big harbor where I guess bananas get shipped to Europe or something like that. And both Kamalaksha and I really dislike bananas, so getting killed by a banana truck would somehow so wrong. But anyhow, so that definitely, I remember that like as a day when I felt like the risks were too big, like the situation wasn't, we weren't really in control anymore. But one thing that I do a lot when we're cycling is that I'll chant and sing in my mind. If things get scary, I'll sing out loud, or if there's heavy headwind, that drowns my voice, because I'm a little bit embarrassed about being a person who cycles and sings for themselves. But I remember that time, especially having just been to Madhuvan and having those, experiences fresh on my mind. I was really chanting pretty seriously in that traffic with those trucks meeting, and there barely being any space for me on the road.
Oh, yeah.
So the long days on the bike, and also we've also done paddling trips where it's even more quiet. We're out at sea, and there's no traffic, and those have been situations where I find that my mind gets a little bit easier to control, that it's a little bit easier for me to chant and to hear. And it really feels, like the chanting, it's not a chore. Like sometimes when I'm at home, it feels like this is just another thing on my to-do list. I'm ashamed of saying this, but that's how it sometimes feels. Like these are the things I still need to get done today. And
Sure.
but so I try to sort of like the last few weeks, for instance, have been kind of stressful, and I've had a bit too much to do and a bit too many things on my list. And so the thought kind of creeps in, that maybe I should give myself a break, and maybe I should, take that time to relax and do something nicer instead. And these, like, the mind starts to whisper, there are so many other things you could do. And I've tried to sort of make this conscious effort of think of chanting like the way I would on the road when I'm scared, that it's a resource. It's not a chore, but it's a resource, that it's something that I need to do, and try to think of it in a way like this is something I need to do to stay sane through this week and all these deadlines. And I know that chanting, is so much more, and I'm talking about it now on a very basic level, and sort of diminishing something great into like I don't want to diminish it into like a stress management technique, but trying to think of it like that this is like what I need. This is my way of, taking care of myself during a difficult time, either, stressful time with work or being on a road with big banana trucks, that this is my lifeline. This is my safety net or whatever. It really helps me just to find that motivation, that inspiration to keep up with my practice.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. I think that most of us are in that same category of thinking that so many other things are important, and being pulled away. Even if you're sitting there chanting, the mind can be pulling you away for the whole 2 hours, thinking about all your to-do list and all and just formulating like I see it like lots of different channels, and we have the Krishna channel that we tune into for a couple seconds, and then we're off into the worry channel or the planning channel. And it's like we're going all over the place. So
and I wish I could sit and chant for 2 hours. I'm not there yet, but I try to, the rounds that I chant, I try to do them properly. I try to sit still, and I've been
nice.
Working on my breathing and trying to sort of because I really like to do asana practice as well, and I've tried to sort of bring in some aspects from that to be more focused, and I do find it helpful, because I think it was about a year ago during that japa retreat that we had, that you were talking about in your class. You were talking about different less than ideal ways of chanting, and one of them was cleaning japa, and that's totally me. walking around and picking things up and putting them in their place, and then you see the next thing, and you can do so many things with the left hand. So I tried to be a little bit more strict with myself, like sitting down, to chant my rounds, and telling the mind that the other things can wait. Like if things get really bad, I'll write something down. If I really get stuck on a thought, I'll write it down and put it aside, and say to my mind that I'll get back to it later. Because it's not like, for me, it's maybe not like Netflix or YouTube that's pulling me, but it's my mind telling me that there are important things to do, serious important things that need to be fixed by me right now. That's like the trap that I
I think you shared so many really practical things about, your own struggle, more internal, which is, where really the sadhaka's journey is more internal than external, even though the external.
I'm very lucky with the externals. I have a really nice, comfortable home and a wonderful husband and a job where I can, basically my dream job. So materially everything's just perfect, and there's no sort of no obstacles of any kind for me to just sit and meditate, except for my mind. That's really the biggest obstacle of them.
Yes. And I think that's probably about 99% of us are in the same struggle. So I'm just looking at the time, because I could sit here and I have a million questions, but I want to have time for the devotees to ask some questions. But I do want to ask one question first, and it's about your comics with your mouse and your duck. And how did you're the mouse, and Kamalaksha is the duck. How did you pick those animals to represent your kind of selves, your ego, or whatever?
One thing that I should say in the name of honesty about my whole artistic career, as well as my path as a devotee, is that so much of it has come to me because of Kamalaksha's help and encouragement. And he was really the one who also encouraged me and pushed me into starting to do comics, and he had done a drawing actually of Mickey Mouse chanting for a publication that he did. He had already done a lot of comics by the time that we met, and he had been traveling around Finland and distributing them to people, because he was doing a lot of Sankirtan back in the 90s. And so he had done that drawing of Mickey Mouse chanting, and I thought it was super cool. And the idea of taking an icon, of Western popular culture like that, and putting it in the wrong setting, so to speak, really appealed to me. So and there's a tradition, in pop art of people doing their own versions of Disney characters. So I kind of intuitively, I was kind of just doodling and did a mouse of my own, and I felt like I could create something interesting, put the mouse in a wheelchair, or the mouse could be chanting or doing all these things that Mickey Mouse would never do. So it immediately became like a character of its own. And with Kamalaksha, so I had the mouse, which was sort of the basic human, and one of the mice would be me, and I would put a K on the shirt of the mouse to separate myself from the masses. And so but I wanted to make Kamalaksha really special, because for me in my life, in so many ways, he's just been super special, and he's besides Guru Maharaj, he's the person that that I'm so grateful to for everything that they've given to me, totally undeserved. And so of course, with Mickey comes Donald. That's just logical. Duck felt the reasonable, logical thing to do. And Kamalaksh is also, his first language is Swedish. He is a part of the Swedish-speaking minority here in Finland, and they're sort of lovingly, jokingly called, like the community of Swedish-speaking Finns is called the duck pond, that they're like a bunch of ducks swimming around and quacking in a pond. So that was also a natural solution. And he also has flat feet. So
Like the duck, yeah.
it all just fell in place like that. So so he's always been a duck, and I've always been a mouse. And when we did a little comic book about getting initiated, we needed to pick an animal for Guru Maharaj. And I think it was he himself who said that he'd like to be a cow, because a guru, he said that the guru is like a cow. You can take him anywhere and he'll give milk. And the cow, you know, being such a generous animal, turning dry grass into milk.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's really also how I feel, you know, overall with Guru Maharaj, that I've been able to give him so little. You know, I haven't really, you know, been able to give him much, but he's given me so immensely in return that, yeah, he really is like the cow.
And your attitude shows how much you've grown in your spiritual life, that you had just so much humility, and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Only because of the mercy of the devotees.
Well, you took advantage of it, because a lot of us have that mercy and we're not taking advantage of it. So it's a characteristic of yours that shines brightly, Krisangi. So
I guess it's another way in which I've been blessed, you know, being able to spend time with Guru Maharaj and being able to, you know, maybe make some choices, but also coming from a background, you know, from a family that could support me financially. So I've never needed to worry about money. So I can just, you know, take a month off and go spend it with Guru Maharaj. So
great
it's really,
fortune. Yeah. Great fortune.
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of people feel sorry for me because of my feet, and I feel sorry for them because they're not in connection to Krishna, to Guru Maharaj. So what is suffering in the end?
Yeah, totally. So true. I just gonna ask if anybody on the call has a question you'd like to ask Krisangi. You just have to unmute yourself and we'll see if we get any questions. And if not, I can ask more. Anybody? Let's see. Thank you very much, Krisangi. This is from Annapurna. I don't understand well all, but I believe this question that, let's see, she's got it in the chat. Okay, but I believe this question that I have, your response in the last part about your creative process is to your Udipana, to the creative process, to set it, your Udipanas in the beginning, during the final of your dialogues and drawings are genius and beautiful. You're an inspiration to me. Thank you again. So it's not a question, but a comment of great appreciation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it really means a lot to me. Doing comics is actually a lot of work. You put a lot of work into creating something that's easy to read, and it's really, I feel that it's a great way of talking about serious issues, because people don't always take it seriously as an art form. So you can sneak in these, you know,
absolutely,
questions about life and death, basically. But I do, you know, ask myself if the world needs another book by Krisangi and Kamalakshan, and getting like positive feedback, like hearing that people appreciate the books really means a lot to me and really inspires me.
Yes, and yeah, your latest comic in the Harmonist about living in two worlds, I think that just, yeah, it spoke to me. I'm sure it spoke to other devotees who saw it. So maybe what inspired you to on that one? Just how do you come up with your art? I guess how do you do it?
One where I'm like rowing back and forth.
Right, the one, yeah, that one.
That came to me. It was a few years ago. We were in Madhuvana, and it was something that Gorsundar said about life, basically life in this world basically being like bouncing back and forth between, you know, enjoyment and like you try to enjoy and then you get disgusted with it and you're like, oh, I'm never gonna do that again, and then you bounce to the side of austerity and then you get disgusted with that and bounce back to enjoyment and back and forth like that. And he was talking about it in such a nice way that it inspired to me. So again, that idea also came to me from someone else. I'm just, you know, picking up things here and there and putting them on paper.
Yeah, well, that's your gift. It seems to be able to take very philosophical points like Bogatiag, you know, going back and forth, and then to create a little comic that totally depicts it. And it's, you know, like you said, some people will read the philosophy and some people will read the, you know, just look at the comic, and
yeah,
you know, pictures worth a million words, or pictures worth, yeah.
Also makes me think of, you know, of my childhood and that time when I was bullied and I felt like an outsider, you know, observing the other kids, and maybe that's something that's useful for me today. That's sort of you know, looking at others from the outside and sort of observing people and their what's going on in their lives, and that's something that's very useful for an artist, you know, creating stories that can feel real. It's important to sort of watch people, to listen to people in order to be able to create characters that feel like real people and that people can relate to. And so in that sense, even those years, you know, when I was miserable, really, even that in some ways maybe in the end has been helpful.
Yeah, to just detach from the whole, you know, trying to enjoy in the world. I think I had that experience also of just being very unhappy as a child and didn't have any disability like that, but just never felt really, you know, any activity just seemed kind of boring and flat, and the world didn't seem very interesting. So yeah, I think it was, you know, at the time, I don't think I was very happy about it, but now I reflect back on it and think, wow, it was a real gift to be able to have that experience.
Yeah, it's difficult to see when you're in the moment, but then, you know, with the years passing, you can kind of step back a little bit and look at it through the lens of philosophy and
really see it was a gift. It was a gift. And so on your hero's journey, I mean, we're all still becoming. We have, you know, some ways to go. I mean, we can look at the stages of bhakti and kind of put ourselves, maybe we're getting to the top of the mountain, but we still have some distance to go yet. But the distance we have come thus far is far, far greater than the distance we have yet to go. So where do you see what like aspirations as far as your bhakti journey and your where would you like to see yourself like in 2 years from now? What changes would you like to see? We've heard a lot of changes that you've made already. And
yeah, 2 years, that's a tough one. You know, I come from a family where women live to a very long, where women reach a high age, and my mom's 82 and she's super active and very sharp in the head. And so I've kind of, had that thought in a way this whole time that there's so much time, and when I'm 70 I'll be really advanced, but somehow I'll magically jump there overnight, and when I'm 90 I'll be super advanced. So, and this is something that I've been thinking about recently as well, that we talk about senior devotees, and I realized that I've been a devotee for 23 years. So in a way I could also be described as a senior devotee. Or if we think of like Guru Maharaj, where was he after 23 years? That kind of thought really struck me, that if I could be described as a senior devotee, am I behaving like one? Do I have the realizations or the sadhana of a senior devotee? Like, do I live up to what we think of when we say the word senior devotee? And that thought kind of made me stop and think about the years that have passed and the years that I have ahead of me, probably in all likelihood.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Rakake, Rake Krishna Marake. Maybe I'll get hit by a car tomorrow morning walking to the grocery store. So that's something I need to work on, that sense of urgency, giving up that idea that I have 50 years in this life to become, that mystical creature that I've always imagined myself being when I'm older, that I should be, doing it here and now, because I am, in fact, looking at the years I'm a senior devotee, but not like looking at the level of spiritual advancement. So how have I spent those years, and how will I spend the next 2 or 20 years? It's something that's been on my mind. So yeah, maybe that's like a goal that I'd like to set for myself, being more focused really, and finally being able to say no to all the side projects.
That's challenging when yeah, especially when you're a competent doer type person, that and the opportunities come and it's like, oh yeah, that I could do that, and it's
I know
hard.
that I get things done. So that's really the trap, for a person like myself, that like self-importance, that feeling of satisfaction that I get from getting things done. So
yeah, Krishna helps us. He has his ways of using our natures. We have to use our natures, and he does allow that. And if we get too far off course, he's expert at pulling us back on. I've seen that so many times.
Yeah, that's true. That's also been my experience. Like I never got to the parliament, and that was really good for me. Like that was the point maybe where Krishna decided that it was enough, that it was time to pull me back.
Nice. Yeah. Excellent. Well, we're just about out of time. I just wonder if there's anything that you would like to share. Mahar, do you have a question?
Oh, I thank you, Krisangi, for that. It was beautiful. And I learned, just a sec, I have to turn this off. Archana Gore, yours is, wait, I got to close the door. Can you close the door? No, just close the door. Because I can't, it's vibrating. I'm sorry, it's echoing, so I couldn't concentrate. Yeah, if you could just close the door, thanks. Yeah, so Gordon Ryan's listening on his phone, so it's making an echo. But I just wanted to say that I really appreciate how you, when you were younger and you had the your feet were deformed and you thought you'd go in the wrong direction. And a lot of these addiction groups, they say that you can't get better, it's a disease. And but I feel like Krishna consciousness, you can really grab someone's disease at the root and really get rid of it forever if somebody really does apply themselves. And I was trying to tell this one group, this one person, and she was saying, oh no, you can't, it's a disease. And so it's very nice to hear your account. I know it, I told her, well, I think I would have gone down the wrong path as well, but because I took to a spiritual path, I don't have any desire for anything anymore. But it's nice to know that there's somebody else who said the same thing. So I got some inspiration from that.
Thank you. And in my case, for hard. So I think
You need to mute yourself, Mahara.
Okay.
But it is really, that's something that I was also thinking about, how the devotee lifestyle, like how it saved us from so many things, and how it's also so beneficial for the whole world. You know, back when in the 90s, like I said, I really appreciated the devotees being vegetarians, and people were like laughing a little bit at the Hindus worshiping cows, you know, the holy cow. And look at the world today. We have the climate change, and today everyone knows that killing cows, you know, has caused all these huge environmental issues. And I'm like, we had it right all along. You know, you can't kill cows because that's going to ruin the world. And now I really feel like science is proving these things that we knew all along, and we were, you know, maybe in my case at least, it was a very naive thing at first. In many ways, it wasn't sort of a lifestyle firmly rooted in philosophy or science or whatnot, but a lot of over the years I've seen that a lot of the things we do, like meditation as well, like right now people talk about how good meditation is for you, and everyone's getting into it, and I'm like, I've been meditating since the 90s.
You had a good cartoon on the meditation and running also. That was on the Harmonist, I remember.
Oh yeah, that was about time as well. And yeah, I'm trying to escape time, kind of escaping death.
Yeah, doesn't work. Except if you're a devotee, you can escape
but
that.
Yeah, everyone has their own path, but for me, it really, that really was a big turning point in my life. And I feel that the other path that I was about to step on, or had kind of stepped on already, would have been in a really dark place. And now I'm in a place of light and happiness. So
we're just so happy that you're part of our group, and you make it brighter for me. So I'm sure that's the case for others. And we'll have to, get your husband to come on and share his journey. It'd be a good companion interview at some point.
Yeah, and he has great stories, from great Sankirtan stories and great stories from the road overall. And he's also, he's got that fixed mindset really that I've struggled with. So he's also been an inspiration for me in that sense, that he's sort of firm.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful to have a partner that is, really fixed in his sadhana, and that can help so much. So yeah, it's great. All right, well, and unless there's any other questions, we'll give one more shot for anybody. We'll kind of end it at this point. Thank everybody for participating. Next week, Guru Nishta will be on for the modern sage. So we look forward to hearing some of his experiences also. We have these wonderful European devotees that we're capturing and bringing them on. So it's great. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Anybody want to unmute and just say something to Krisangi before we close off? That would be nice. You can say hello. Anybody?
Krishangi ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you so much, Krisangi. That was so awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Krishangi and Sumati. I hope we get to meet at Madhavan again someday.
I hope so too.
And I just loved everything that you said. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with all of us.
Thank you. I loved what you said in your interview 2 weeks ago. It was really amazing. I'm just so happy to be a part of this family, you know.
I know, we're all so blessed.
It's taking a break in June, isn't it?
No, we do have the June schedule, and
Okay, excellent.
yeah, so we are going to be continuing with the series as long as we have some interest and devotees willing to participate. We're going to do it.
Excellent. That's very good news. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll be getting you on there too. So, and Sargrahi will have definitely get you guys on. Haribol.
Haribol.
Good to see both of you. And yes, and thank you for your very beautiful little book too. Okay, well, everybody have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see everybody soon. Not before, by Sunday anyway, hopefully. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Oh, thank you, Krishangi, so much.
Thank you so much for having me.